This strange little animal is called the quarry. If it weren't for that big fluffy tail, you could easily mistake it for an ordinary mouse. That tail is actually such a defining feature that one of its common names is the brush-tailed marsupial rat. They live in the rocky deserts of Central Australia. During the day, they usually stay hidden in burrows. Night is when they come out to move around and look for food. And that creates a small problem for zoos. Most visitors show up during the day. So if you actually want to see nocturnal animals doing nocturnal things, this is where nocturnal houses come in. Hi everyone, I'm Cassian. In this video, I want to show you the place I was looking forward to the most during my trip to Frankfurt, Grzimekhaus. This is one of the largest nocturnal houses in Europe. More than 20 species of nocturnal animals live here. Some are familiar, like sugar gliders. Others are much harder to come across, like the eye. It feels like a collection of some of the most iconic animals you would expect to find in a nocturnal house. Grzimekhaus controls its lighting to keep the entire building roughly 12 hours out of sync with the outside world. Day and night are completely reversed. The animals have long adapted to this rhythm, which means visitors get a chance to meet them when they are actually awake. That's also why we get to see these quarries behaving like this, instead of sleeping through the entire visit. Let's keep moving. We are heading further into the dark. These are eastern cars. At this point, I'd almost call them old friends. I've seen at least a dozen of them across different zoos. That said, they are terrible models. Their energy level and attention span are surprisingly close to actually mastelids. They always seem to be moving. Although technically, they are not mastelids at all. Like the quarry, they belong to a completely different marsupial family. This is a night monkey, a small nocturnal primate from South America. I've seen two species of night monkeys in zoos. One of them is Adara's night monkey, which sometimes stays active during the day. Because of that, some zoos keep them in regular daytime exhibits. The species at Frankfurt Zoo is the gray-bellied night monkey, which is much more committed to the nocturnal lifestyle. At first, I had trouble telling apart these big-eyed nocturnal primates. Take this one, for example. Big eyes, active at night, slightly unusual face. It's easy to start grouping them together. This one is the northern Ceylonese slender loris, a subspecies of the grey slender loris from Sri Lanka. Night monkeys and slender lorises live on opposite sides of the world. Outside of zoos, they would never meet, and yet they ended up looking strangely similar. Nature seems to enjoy arriving at the same answer more than once. But this one was even more interesting. This is the Asian garden dormouse. And no, it's not the quarry we just looked at, even though the tails are suspiciously similar. When I was sorting through the footage later, I actually caught myself thinking this was the same animal. Then I looked a little closer. The dormouse has a dark stripe running across the cheek and toward the eye, which makes it much easier to tell apart once you notice it. The funny part is that these two aren't even remotely related. The quarry is a marsupial from Australia. The Asian garden dormouse is a rodent from Asia. Different continents, completely different branches of the mammal family tree. And somehow they still ended up with almost the same tail. Nature does seem to have favorite solutions. Do you remember the Brazilian porcupines from my last video at Pilsen Zoo? I ran into them again in Frankfurt. This time though, it was at night. Overall, they seemed a little more active than when I saw them during the day, which probably means I got unusually lucky last time. So once again, thank you to my porcupine friends in Pilsen. At least in front of the camera, you were extremely professional. The exhibit for Seba's short-tailed bats is probably one of the most recognizable parts of Grzimekhaus. The whole space is designed to feel like a cave system, with an underground stream running through it. Bats constantly move between different chambers overhead. Up next is the largest exhibit in the nocturnal house. Even in the dark, you can tell there's a lot more happening here. 4 species share this space. On the ground are aardvarks and South African spring hares, which somehow always look incredibly polite to me. I've seen this combination in 3 different zoos by now. Up in the trees live Senegal bush babies and southern tree hyraxes. Because the exhibit is so deep and much darker than the smaller ones, filming the animals in the canopy was difficult, so I ended up spending most of my time with the aardvark. And it was immediately obvious that this box contained something very important. I stayed there for quite a while, partly because I wanted to see what was inside. But the aardvark never revealed the answer. Its feeding strategy is simple. A long tongue means opening the box is completely unnecessary. A plain cardboard box turned out to be enough to keep it occupied. Environmental enrichment sometimes feels surprisingly simple. One more thing. It wasn't until I reached the aardvark exhibit that I suddenly realized something. This entire building barely had any smell, which is impressive because aardvarks can be memorable. Some aardvark exhibits are impossible to forget. The next few connected rooms are home to what may be the strangest animal in the entire zoo, the ii. I actually talked about them before in my video from Tierpark Berlin. Eyes always remind me a little of a golem. There's something slightly unsettling about the eyes and the fingers. If one suddenly appeared in the dark, I probably wouldn't stay calm either. Back in Madagascar, where they come from, some local traditions see them in a similar way. In certain places, eyes have long been associated with bad luck, or treated as animals best left alone. There's also a story that gets repeated quite often. According to the story, when early European visitors asked locals what the animal was called, people avoid saying the name directly, and answered something like "ii" instead. Something closer to that one, or you know what I mean. The visitors misunderstood and assumed that was the animal's actual name. Whether that story is true or not, I can't say. Fortunately, modern research hasn't found anything particularly mysterious or supernatural about them. The longer I look at them though, the cooler they start to seem. Sharing the exhibit with them are Malagasy giant rats. They show up in nocturnal houses surprisingly often, so I have run into them quite a few times. This group actually bred successfully last year. The last animal in the nocturnal section comes from Australia. This is a Rakali. Unfortunately, I didn't get much footage of them, so for now, we will mostly be seeing the exhibit rather than the animal. To be honest, I've completely forgotten where I filmed these lookdowns. At this point, I might as well borrow them for a little day-to-night transition, because Grzimekhaus has one more section left, the daytime exhibits, and they are almost as diverse as the nocturnal side. This is a naked mole rat, a wonderfully strange little animal. Then I run into some old friends again. These are black and rufous elephant shoes. I felt obligated to stop and say hello. Nearby live their relatives, the round-eared elephant shrews. Both species already appeared in my earlier video from Pilsen Zoo. Apparently we keep meeting. This is an indoor exhibit for Asian small-clawed otters. Unlike some of our earlier residents, these are actual mastodons, and possibly one of the cutest members of the family. Even among mastodons, otters seem unusually energetic, especially in water. All that movement helps them maintain body temperature. Only 2 otters live in this enormous exhibit, but somehow they still manage to create the feeling that there are at least 20. Next came a few more animals from South America: southern tamanduas, white-faced sakis, Geraldis marmosets, and greater guinea pigs. At this point, I had to admit something. I honestly can't remember who lived with whom. Maybe the tamandua shared the space with the saki. Maybe the marmoset lived with the guinea pig. Maybe I'm completely wrong. but I do know I saw all of them here. And finally, one more look at the northern tree shrew. Getting usable footage of them was not easy. And with that, we have reached the end of Grzimekhaus. Even though I spent a long time here, I still miss a few animals. One of them was the lesser hedgehog tenrec. I really wanted to see them again. But I guess that's just how travel works. You always leave with something you didn't quite get to experience. And maybe that's also the reason to come back. Thanks for watching. Next time, we are staying at Frankfurt Zoo and visiting the great apes. See you then!